Welcome back to the podcast. We're here with Scott A. McCreight, who has an excellent book called Overcoming Insurmountable Odds, How I Rewired My Brain to Do the Impossible. And Scott, in this book, he chronicles his transformational journey from life as a shy, underdeveloped kid with cerebral palsy to becoming a confident, accomplished engineer, an extreme athlete, and bodybuilder. So we're going to hear about some of these life secrets from Scott, how to be your best self, how to be productive, how to be happy, and so much more. So Scott, glad to be speaking with you.
Well, glad to be here.
So what are you all about? Maybe introduce you a little bit, but if someone says, okay, what's the message, what's the passion, what is the 30 to 60 second elevator pitch about what you are and your goals are, what's the answer?
Oh, wow. Betty, a very short elevator ride. Never quit, never give up. There's so much out there, so many people out there trying to cut us down or trying to make themselves look better and us look not so well in life, that society in general is like, it's hard to stay focused and upbeat. Two things that I live my life around is always always keep learning, never stop. Complacency will kick in, and when complacency kicks in, we basically get lazy and crazy things happen that we don't want to happen.
Crazy, unpredictable, negative things we never want to happen. And I think you're so right, Scott, that there's all this noise around. And for some reason, what comes to mind is that I don't know how many pieces are in an airplane, say like 1 million pieces. And if you took all those pieces and scattered them all on the runway and you randomly connected the different pieces, you would never get an airplane. It would never happen by random chance, all the millions upon millions of possible combinations. But if you went forward and had a plan and had step-by-step instructions, and you could navigate the noise and the randomness to get to where you want to go. And I think that's what we need to be thinking about, is just how to focus and how to not let the noise and the negativity win. And so when that comes to you and your origin story and how you came about, like, what was that like for you? Like, what does never quitting mean for you, and what have you gone through?
All right. So back to the airplane analogy, and then I will get back to that question because it all fits together. When we build a plane or we get on an airplane and all these parts are together, focused in on a task of it's an air taxi, basically. You're getting you to part A to point B. When people build this plane, they have an instruction set. They have all these complicated diagrams and all this, and then it forms this plane. They test it and they get it out there. So when you get on a plane, you may not even think about that, and you sit down in your seat and says, okay, I'm going to be in Chicago in about 2 hours, or wherever you're going. In life, it's not that simple. We're born, and in this case, I talk about neuroplasticity, which is the inherent brain's ability to rewire. Our brain is always learning. No matter if you're asleep or awake, I call dreaming defragging your hard drive, so to speak. So it's playing movies in your head or whatever, how you ever think about it, but it's still reorganizing and all that. So in the plane analogy is, if you want to better your life or whatnot, a lot of people get out a notebook and says, all right, step 1, get out of bed, or whatever it is. It's not that simple. It's the brain learns in a novel way, the better. Meaning, if it's boring, we don't learn. We've all been through those classes in school, and you're going, now, why am I learning this? And there's no reality to what you're learning, and then our brain just doesn't engage. If we make this life interesting, novel, our brains pick up on it easier. My philosophy is, I grew up with a neurological condition, and I still have it, called cerebral palsy. Basically, it's a stroke at or near birth, whereas stroke is a stroke after birth. It's basically an interruption of oxygen to your brain at a particular moment in that time. With cerebral palsy, it's in the birthing process or slightly after or before. In the old days, they said, oh, your brain is hardwired, you're never going to get better, or You may get a little bit better, but don't expect miracles. Okay. It was a lot different back in the 60s than it is today, but still, it was the hardwired concept. Ironically enough, I was told, do not attempt and you will not fail. That's kind of what I learned in life. And so therefore I would never attempt anything. So therefore I would never fail and look stupid or whatever the kids would, ridicule on the playground, whatever when I was a little tot, stuff like that. Unfortunately, this is a behavioral pattern that is not correct, should never be enforced. You may learn a little slower or a little more different as I bring out some very colorful characters in the book. Leo, a lion, and a mouse, a little lab mouse that turns into a really mighty mouse and does some crazy things. They're all analogies for us being as young kids. I learned that the easy things in life should be easy, and therefore for me they weren't, and I shut down. As a Leo, the late bloomer, is a book by Robert Cross, is an analogy for me being this lion with cerebral palsy that learned on his own timetable. Didn't mean I couldn't learn. I just had to find a different way of novelty and all that. Throughout my life, I gravitated to the very hard stuff in life. And I don't mean the easy stuff that was hard for me, but the very hard stuff, because I learned that, okay, the easy stuff where it was not easy and I would fail, therefore don't even do it. So I skipped over the easy to the very hard stuff that most people would never even dream of attempting. And there's an incredible story about getting into scuba diving when I was 15, certified at 16 with cerebral palsy. At the time, didn't know if my doctors and all the instructors didn't know if I could do it, but what the heck, let's see if Scott can do it. I not only mastered that, but I am now a scuba diving technical dive instructor with over 850 hours underwater and 16 certifications, including full cave, mixed gas, rebreathers. I mean, stuff that is insanely outside of the normal range. I'm also a skydiver, and I talk about that as well in the book, that people said, no, you can't do that. You got cerebral palsy. And it wasn't I was being defiant, but it's like, okay, these are things that most people would never even attempt to try. Therefore, I know that if I fail at something like this, okay, I gave it my best shot, but it's better than not trying. Trying is a word I don't like using because you've already convinced yourself you're not going to be able to achieve it. I like to attempt something or do something, but when you're saying, I'm going to try this, chances are you've already convinced yourself subconsciously you can't do it. So getting into these sports, whitewater rafting, class 5, climbing, rappelling, high angle rescue, or some of the stuff that people just said, Grand Canyon. I mean, there's a beautiful story in the book about the Grand Canyon, from water to rim to water to rim in 6 days, with a group of folks that were very much more qualified than I. And yet the story of surviving and triumphing over that. And one of the guys who said, oh, by the way, and you have cerebral palsy, at the very end of it, it's a very challenging, but I did this not because I wanted to prove my worthiness, but it's because life is meant to be lived. And God has all given us bodies and stuff, and we all have deficiencies. It's how we use our intellect, our brain, and these techniques that I describe on functional movements and these neural plastic behaviors that we can train our mind to do far, far more than we could ever dream of doing. And I bring you along the journey. I don't even tell you these stories, but I invite you into them. into the point where, no, I'm not just doing this. I show you how to do this as well, and do far, far more than I will ever do. And that's the exciting part. Is I can't wait to come along others, and we'll get into this in a minute or two, but come along others that will have their own stories that follow this book, in volume 2 or whatever. I don't know. Just the next, in that story of coming alongside others that are have you got your own stories, and they're beautiful stories, and it's just how we use our bodies to get the best out of it. I mean, a lot of people that have stroke, traumatic brain injury, or cerebral palsy, they've already convinced themselves that they won't be, quote, normal, or they won't be able to do this or that. I'm here to challenge that. We all have deficiencies. It's how we allow our brain to recover from that and get the most out of it.
I love it. That's beautiful. And there's so much to think about in what you said there, in that life is meant to be lived, and also in just paying attention to the trash that's in our heads and being careful with our words. Like I'm right there with you. Is I do my very best as well to not use the word try, to not say things like wait or should, to be more direct. Can't. Yes, that's a big one. It's like, well, there's can't, and that you haven't found a way, or that what you're trying to do maybe can be different or does not serve you. Can't is just very defeatist. And there's something to be said there about being aware of the language of the written words and the spoken words that other people say, and also that, more importantly, what we ourselves say, because it's so easy to just get caught in these repeat patterns and this repeat self-defeatism, and then you become your own worst enemy, and you're not achieving these things, not because you can't, but because you just will not let yourself do it, or you will not use your imagination, or you not have the support system. And some of this sort of excitement and fitness mentality that you're mentioning here, of pursuing those hard things, of going for those challenges, of having a plan, of having focus, and of learning, and not just learning the fun and easy stuff, but of learning the rules. Like you mentioned here a few times about you get certified for this and this. You're not just dabbling. It's not just a hobby. You're saying, what are the rules of the game, and what do I need to do, and how can I accomplish that, and how can I use whatever limitations not as something that defines me or holds me back, but as something to say, well, let me try to use that and say, well, other people, or maybe me myself, thought that I couldn't do this. Well, let me prove that wrong, or let me just get the data, the evidence to find out that that isn't wrong. And so we all have these things in life, right, that we can accomplish, whether it's physical or mental, or going back to school, or climbing that mountain. But how do we overcome the usual pitfalls? Because it's easy to have like too many ideas, not enough focus. It's easy to quit when the first obstacle happens. So what do you think that you were tapped into that we can learn from to follow through and to focus and to achieve these things, so that way we're not just doing halfway? How do we follow through and actually accomplish these things?
A methodology, an organized methodology. Some call it the systematic approach. I come from an engineering background. Again, when I was a small kid, I this is kind of a geeky story, but I built my first ham radio when I was about 11 years old. It couldn't legally operate it without a control operator until much later in life, 21, and that's a story in the book itself. But I always wanted to be an amateur radio operator. I didn't even know really what that meant. I just loved the idea of being on the air all over the world, listening stuff. Again, I grew up as a shy, introverted kid. So instead of being in front of people and being ridiculed or whatever for my looks, or, oh, Scott has CP, you can definitely tell that, or whatever. And there's a self-image there. It's the geekiness of understanding the engineering world. Bring that forward a lot. I struggled to get into college because they said I wasn't smart enough to go to college, and they're into the adults. So I believed it for a long time. Well, I now have 4 degrees, 4 advanced degrees in all science, by the way, curriculums. And what that I learned from all of this is there's a systematic approach to how our brain organizes and how these neurons are impeded through or because of cerebral palsy. I use the analogy of the pothole in the road. So when we're young, you know, the being born or whatever, our brain is damaged, brain damage, and it's like a pothole in the road. When you drive to work every day, you know, you learn to go around this pothole, and that route that we take to go around this pothole, what, 2 times a day to go back or whatever, it becomes a fascinated network, meaning you don't even think about it, you just go around it. So in the middle of the night, these guys repave the road, you know, the pothole's gone. But the next day we get up and we're still going around a pothole that's no longer there. Our brain has the power of healing, and that's the neural regeneration process. And in a baby, it's typically by the age of 3.5 years old. However, these vacillated networks have been formed. You know, you don't think about picking up a glass of water and drinking it. It's just natural to most of us. But that's an elegant dance between your bicep and your tricep. And I explain all this in scientific terms. And for the average person that are drinking the water, we just pick it up and drink it. So this vacillated network is maladaptive in its form because we're going around this pothole. So I teach the techniques in these books of how to go over that pothole that's been filled in, i.e. creating a new neural pathway, a muscle map. You can never unlearn a muscle map, but you can overlearn it the correct way or more efficient. And that's why people train in the gym and, you know, hours upon hours of sports related training and all that. And I picked up this concepts of this is we got to go back and form. Vince Lombardi, for instance, said, perfect practice makes perfect. Not practice makes perfect. If you do the wrong thing over and over again, all you're doing is going around that pothole again, but on the other side or whatnot. But if you do perfect practice and getting that instilled, then when you go out and do these things in life that I talk about, you know, you'll be doing the Grand Canyon before you even know it. And that's what happened to me. Most of this that I talk about was even before this concept of neuroplasticity even rang in my head. I was doing this and didn't understand why. And an incredible trainer came alongside me in 2011 and showed me that I had the wrong mindset. Somewhere in my past, I learned, no, you can't do it, so don't try. I was already doing a lot of these things, not perfect, but 90%. And this person showed me that mindset not only had to be changed, and I want to talk about subconscious, the can't, the try attitude, to yes, the do, and I can overcome, not the arrogance, but the fact that do not let yourself be limited. And I use a mouse in the maze. She put me through these experiments with me being the mouse in the maze in the stimulus response, where you have the mouse in there and you want them to do something to see if it would happen. I, being the mouse, unaware of these experiments, were outrunning her maze every time. And then I started realizing, and she realizing that the maze isn't the limiting factor. It's my own head. My brain had already healed. The MRIs were clean and perfectly right. I just hadn't yet caught up to my potential. So my psychological impact of it was we limit ourselves in what we do. And that's partly because of the environment that we're in, partly because of the company we keep. And I don't mean like your best friends. I mean the world around you is you know, so that like this stuff like the Grand Canyon trip, whitewater rafting. I was on a class 5 water rafting trip in Colorado, and I joined the illustrious whitewater swim team. That's an honorary membership. And if you fall overboard during a rafting trip, like you just don't fall over, you fall over and you actually have to be rescued and pulled back in the boat and all that. And the water was cold and it was great. The instructor came by a little later, says, "Hey man, was that too rough on you? Was that all right?" It says, "Oh, hell no, this is awesome." Because that was one of the first times that somebody didn't treat me that I had kid gloves or cerebral palsy. That, I was not only normal, but I left that raft when crazy things happens and everything was fine. The training kicked in and all. But, it's like, oh, heck yeah, give me more, and not throwing me off the raft again. but in that case, it says finally somebody started treating me like a normal, average person that had capabilities and all that, instead of this kid that was shy and introverted and had this self-imposed limitations. Now, yeah, we all have limitations, and I'm not saying those are real, but we can limit those. And these techniques that I bring out I'm a bodybuilder now, a power lifter, and I don't do it to compete. I do compete, but it's against myself. It's what can I do? Where is my bar, so to speak? Where is that limit? And I explain in the book that the bar of your limitations is really a figment of your own imagination, and I tell you how to raise this bar to the point where it's no longer a bar. In the case of the mouse going through the maze, that mouse became mighty and began to fly. And okay, mighty mouse, you get the idea in that analogy. But I went into skydiving as a result of that. And it's not because, oh, you can jump out of a perfectly good airplane, why would you do that? In my response is because it's there, it's fun, it's something that I've always wanted to do. And the fact that no one's going to tell me that cerebral palsy is going to limit me in that. And I don't mean tandem jumping. I've never done a tandem. I meant on my own with my own parachute, learning the skills like everybody goes through and stuff like that. And so I go through these stories, and it doesn't mean that you, the listener or the reader, has to do these things, but there's other things in your life that you may not even know that you really, really, really want to do these. I didn't wake up one morning and says, "Oh, let's go skydiving," or as in cave diving. "Oh, let's go jump in a hole in the Yucatan Peninsula filled with mud and go hours into these cave systems with a limited supply of gas and a very little string to get back out with." No, but we build that up into the systematic approach of overcoming these insurmountable odds. And that's why the book was titled that, is we all have our insurmountable odds. And that's what life is all about.
It's helpful to hear your engineering and trainer and sort of combined with like the fun mindset of choosing these big, hairy, scary goals and then having a long-term plan and having the milestones to get there, right? Because it's easy to say, like we're talking this whole time about self-sabotage, right? And you can say, well, I want to go cave diving. Oh, that's so beyond my capabilities. Well, sure, at the moment right it is, but right now, and it's easy to say it's so far away, it's just a black and white kind of thinking. But instead you say, well, how have others done it? How have others trained to get there? What are the steps between point A and point B? What kind of equipment do I need? What kind of certification do I need? What kind of things do I need to learn about, like, just the head learning, but then also like the physical learning and going and doing some like smaller dives, and just what's the plan to get there, instead of just saying, oh, too hard, can't do it. And so in your book, you made me have all kinds of flashbacks to things like, backpacking for like 5 days in Boy Scouts, or being in band, or being in Little League, all these things where it's all the same but different, right? Where you have just, here's my current status, here's what my goal is, and then here are the steps I need to take it, knowing that along the way, I might say, well, these kinds of tasks come easy, but then these other things, even though they might be fundamentals, catching fly balls in baseball or grounders, that might be hard. And it's just like you do the repetition to get there and then track your results and then overcome those unexpected obstacles and then get to the milestone. That way you can then look at what the next milestone is. And that sort of thing is doable once we have this sort of engineering mindset and don't just give up, don't let the emotions win, use the emotions and have this long-term plan. And, you mentioned a few minutes ago about how a lot of what makes this work is not just the thinking and the planning and the dedication and the repetition and the fun, but also involving other people, right? And you mentioned a little bit about kind of this like paying it forward and abundance mindset. And it's not just about you, but it's also about helping others. So can you unpack that a little bit and tell us what you're all about as far as like the people, the relationships, and helping others instead of just yourself?
Yes, good point. To capture on the last comment about having that plan, you may I give the example the backpacking trip to the Grand Canyon. I didn't wake up one morning and just say, I'm going to the Grand Canyon. Let's go jumping to a canyon. And I mean, I've been there as a kid. There's no way in heck I'm going to go down there, as a kid, because I was told no. I started hiking with a group of very experienced hikers on day trips around and just trained every day for these long hill country hikes or whatever. And then finally they said, well, we're putting together a team of folks to go to the Grand Canyon. Would you like to be a part? And I went, my negativity, inside voice was, there's no way in heck. But then I said, well, what the heck? Okay, let's see if I can do it. So it was a progression of steps. I may not know what the outcome, you may not know what the outcome is. But for instance, if you wanted to go scuba diving, you wanted to get certified, okay, take a class, see where that leads, see if those interests spark another interest. And before you know it, you'll be down in the Grand Caymans or something, doing a great liveaboard or something. I don't know, whatever that. I mean, I didn't get into scuba diving in this story to be where I am now. I just got it because it was something I always wanted to do, and they said, no, you can't do that. A little hint in the book: I was raised in a competition water ski family, so I was always around water. I actually learned how to swim before I was able to walk. Come to find out that with neurological impairments like cerebral palsy and stroke, water therapy is one of the best mediums to practice in, to do your therapy in, because it takes the gravity forces, the muscle sets that work against gravity out of the equation to help you balance that muscle set. Wow. Now, I wouldn't have planned that. My folks who didn't know I had CP until 18 months after I was adopted and born and adopted, I just grew up in that. Back to the backpacking thing is I just went along that path. So back here, you see the wall, these photos here. This is an area of photos of things that I would love to do coming up. And I won't go into that because that's for the next book. Now, I mean, these things that may or may not become reality, but these are visual points from my head to say, this is roughly the goal that I think I want to go next. How do I get there? And that's an organic process. So your question of the people, the communities, and that ties back to complacency. When you stop learning, you stop living, and complacency will kill. Cave diving directly pounds that in you. If you do something wrong in a cave, there's called a cascade failure. By the third failure, it's fatal. And most of it is complacency, that we didn't keep up the training or the gas supply or whatever. In skydiving, same thing. The complacency in not checking your gear, keeping current and training will kill you. Boil that down to regular life is if you stop learning and expanding upon what you want to do, you become lethargic, become overweight, eat too much, get out of shape, have a heart attack, kill you. Same deal, but a lot slower. And that almost happened to me in life. I gave up. complacency, not physically give up, but my mental capacity gave up. And I talk about that in my book. It sneaks up on you. Complacency sneaks up. I talk about some imaginary friends in the book to help visualize this. And what I was getting at is when you surround yourself by quote experts or people that know more about these areas than you do, you learn from them. Your brain's going to absorb this material a lot faster. I use the term novel. When you train in a gym doing novel approaches to weightlifting, your body picks these up faster, your brain learns faster. We want more. You surround yourself with more people will start coming around you. Before I knew it, I was written up in 3 medical journals and 2 PhD papers for doing what I'm doing. And I'm going, I thought you were just patronizing me. This is really, I said, no, what you're doing, we're dumbfounded. And my doctor said, we have no idea why you're able to do this. And I went, internal talk only, didn't say this to them. You're the experts. And I'm just the person that's doing a horrible job at it, I thought, but maybe I'm doing something right. But it wasn't because I wanted to show the world. I wanted to live life to the fullest. And so coming alongside others, and I talk about this in the book, in the chapter Sharing What I Have Learned, Brain Muscle Alliance, is forming, and it's a pun on words, but brain muscle alliance, because in my brain, my body has to be in a line to be able to do these things. And 1/3 of the book is talking about the neural connections and how to strengthen those connections in the brain muscle alliance. But I'm also talking about the people that come along, the brain doctors, the brain specialists, the psychiatrists, and all the brain type of people come together with the muscle experts, the kinesiologists, the doctors, the people who know the body and how that works together to help form that alliance, not only between them two, but by you. Like Robert, you come to me and says, I want to be able to do something like this. I need to lose about 10 pounds. I'm not saying you do, but a person that says, how do I do this? And so you have to get these experts together to have that holistic approach. I call it sharing what I have learned, not with myself, but that I'm just a model, and somebody that has figured out not rocket science, but how to take the systematic approach. The classical doctors that you go to may only say pill and drill. Well, we can do liposections and take it all out, but you're not changing how your body's reacting to all this. So you're just going to gain that back. Or, we're going to have to break your toes and reform them because they're all crooked. And it says, but if we look at it from the holistic perspective, the brain muscle alliance, if you can get your neural circuits to say, hey, my toes are bent or whatever, let's straighten them out. The neural connections on spasticity, and I talk about that. I'm not saying the pill and drill is not the answer. Let's just look at it from, if you can get that brain muscle alliance working properly, external and internal, God created you perfect and wonderfully made. We're not perfect, but that's the whole point. Because if we were perfect, would we need one another to help guide this through? No, this is challenging. And Mighty Mouse, if you go back to the comic strip or the cartoon, Mighty Mouse didn't wake up one morning and fly off. He had to learn. He had to go through all that trouble learning. Leo, that lion, was late at everything he did, but when he did learn and when he did start to excel, he was a mighty lion to come. And I use those philosophies in all of us. We all have a little lion in us, or a little mouse, that we're trying to get through this maze of life. So it takes a village to raise an athlete, as I say in the book. It's never been about me. I love going into the gym, and I work out about 6 days a week. I'm in the gym, not because I want to be in the gym necessarily, but I want to do these activities that are outside. But in order to do that, I have to perfect, have to practice. And I don't mean that you have to do this, have to go to the gym, hundreds and thousands of hours a day and all this craziness, but whatever you set your mind to, you will do it. But it takes people to come alongside you and help you learn from them. And by the way, they're learning from you. So I love this one. People come up to me and it says, man, you're doing amazing things. There's no way in heck I can do that. And I went, really? That's a challenging word. It's like, I challenge you that you can and do more. And it said, oh no, but you're buff, and or whatever the words are they use. And it said, no, wait a minute. I have cerebral palsy. I didn't start out this way. And I show them that. I call it the fat photo, the year zero, my baseline photo of being 198 pounds, 39% body fat, and pre-diabetic. Didn't even know about the diabetes part until the next year when I took year one at 163 at 16% body fat, and my blood chemistry was great. But I show them that, it says, no, I think you can do more. And so I said, what is your effing problem, or whatever, to them, going that it's not a body problem. It's your attitude to going into it. So this book was written in 3 parts: the science behind it, the neuroplasticity part about it that builds on the science, and then, oh, by the way, I put in these stories and to bring the reader alongside what it feels like to have a child with cerebral palsy. The parents, a new parent, doesn't know what they're about to get, that they're in for, or the kid doesn't know that there is if I could go back to my younger self and share this book with myself, that would have solved a lot of pain and hardship. But would that pain and hardship that I would save myself result in the book not being here? I don't know. That's one of those chicken and eggs. But if I can help the next generation, or that, to live their fullest life now, that would have solved so much pain and hardship in lives to come. But the point being is, life is meant to be lived to the fullest. And these techniques are easily done if you just employed them. And I don't mean they're simple. I mean, it's not like you have to have a PhD in astrophysics or some outrageous stuff that, like, there's no way in heck I could do that. Or my case is so much more severe than that. Said, well, could be, but doesn't mean that the brain is not neuroplastic in nature and can be, it all starts here. When you tell your brain what you can do and get your body to be in line with that brain muscle alliance is powerful.
That's wonderful. And I agree completely that it takes a village, and that simple does not mean easy, right? Something can be simple, but also hard. And that we owe it to ourselves to get this sort of momentum. Like, you have that momentum of basically a vision board behind you of those things that you want to accomplish. And in the moment, in the everyday, it seems silly to push yourself more. But you're saying that it's sort of one or the other. Either the choice is to figure out what you want your passion or your obsession to be in whatever form, whatever accomplishment, and be ruthlessly pursuing that in some way, because the alternative is to keep making these compromises with yourself of the cascade failure that you mentioned there, where it is so easy to say, I'm tired today, I'll skip the gym, or to say, well, I'm driving my car and there's that check engine light again, I'll just ignore it today. And next thing you know, maybe you're in some relationship and you take it for granted, and you say, I won't buy her flowers this month, or I won't take her out on a date, or I'll cancel this meeting. And then it's harmless in the moment, but if you end up on that path and that pattern, then bad things will happen, and then it requires effort all over again to get the muscle back, to get back to where you were. So this is very helpful and powerful to think about, with the sort of slippery slope, to be always pursuing these goals, to have the support system, to learn from others, to be watching the YouTube videos, to be reading the biographies, to be in some kind of a club or a mastermind group, or be speaking with mentors and mentor others, because that's, as you said, it's the only way to live, right? Life is meant to be lived. And the alternative is to just kind of have this slow failure. And you hear about that sometimes, right? You hear about that like in the nursing home at the old age. They don't participate. They don't do the crossword puzzles. They don't read. They don't challenge themselves. And then it's just like a slow decline towards death. And even some young people are like that, right? So at any age, you can easily just stop learning and stop reading. I think I saw some statistic once, Scott, where like 41% of college graduates have not read a book since college. Just terrifying. No way to live. And so the solutions are maybe do not readily present themselves, but as long as we're looking and pursuing and being dedicated in this sort of thing, then we can and we should get there and kind of navigate that path. And so your book is called Overcoming Insurmountable Odds: How I Rewired My Brain to Do the Impossible. And so, Scott, we want to send people and get that book, and we want to excite them, but also leave them thirsty. And we don't want to outstay our welcome. So we're in our final few minutes of our discussion here. And so do you think, as we're kind of winding down our talk here, is there anything that we left out or that you think requires some attention that is not discussed enough?
Yes. One thing that I will bring up, expect failures. What I mean by that is there's always going to be an unexpected slowdown in your overcoming. And I talk at great lengths of several major slowdowns or unexpected, quote, failures that ended up recoursing my life. One in the book is called The Reckoning. It's about a skydiving accident. So severe, it required 3 surgeries and all that. And you know, on the surface, people will say, "Oh, he flew too high," or the proverbial the mouse that flew too high, or whatever. I use that as an example. It's nothing that I did wrong. It's nothing that my lack of training did wrong. It stuff happens. There's another word for that, but stuff happens in life. But there's some stories in that book that I go into detail on. Expect the unexpected. Expect that you're going to get on this. There's going to be several waves. You first of all, in my case, a trainer had to spark that divine in me, that to go beyond what I thought I could. I did not realize it, but I had already come so far up to that point. Most people have never even gotten to that point. I have a story in the book. A military special forces guy said, "Scott, you don't do easy well, but you do darn well hard. Let me try that again. You do hard darn well." Most people will never experience, including us special forces guys, what you have done. And I don't mean I'm going out and do the warfare and all that, but he said, you don't let a limitation stop you. And that drive is what has created this. When I started this program in 2011, all I wanted was 2 hours in a gym and maybe a personal trainer to get a little bit in shape and figure out how to use this stuff called equipment. I'd never been in a gym before. What I didn't realize, it was going to spark a movement that is growing 16 years now and worldwide. I get requests from people all the time about, I'm an elite athlete, or I have cerebral palsy, or I have a stroke. How do you do this part in your book? Or can you tell me more information about that? It's their knowledge. I've sparked that in them. I tell folks all the time, expect the unexpected. You will come to a point where you think that you can't overcome that, whatever that is. Don't stop. You may have to go around a little bit and find a different avenue, or have somebody come alongside you. I say this in weightlifting, we use the term spotter. When you're bench pressing, for instance, you have a spotter that they're there to make sure that you do it correctly. But in that last bit of that final push to get to that weight to the very top, they're there to help you. That's what your brain muscle alliance, so to speak, is all about. People that come alongside you. Never give up. The biggest thing about the skydiving incident is I had to start over, not once, not twice, but 3 times over. I had to start again from the very baseline of my physical therapy, from going under the knife surgeries. incredible story. I don't say that to, well, you know, to bring pity or whatever. I bring that to say infallible odds against me. Everyone was saying, you know, stop. Why are you doing this? And I said, because that small voice inside me says, I can't give up. I am not supposed to give up. Do not be defeated. I mean, I had to find a different path around it, or the complications due to the surgery or the rehab that I started over 4 times over, but I didn't. And so it's taken me 5 years to get over the skydiving accident. But I'm back, and I'm breaking the records that I have in the book. And it's so fascinating to see these people that have come into my life now and that have been there from the day one of that transformation, and getting them together and forming this community, this quote user group, so to speak, of Leos. You know, they're all on their paths of doing these things. The biggest thing I would think is push beyond what you can do, because you know what, you are the only thing that can stop you from achieving unexpected gains, the overcoming those insurmountable odds. It's not your neighbor, it's not, you know, your coworker, it's not your parents that say the yeses and nos to it all. It's you, because guess what, you control that brain, and you have to find those unique methods that I describe in the book to make your body do what it's supposed to do. And these techniques, you know, I reference these massively more experienced and massively more smart doctors and kinesiologists and physical therapists. And I freely give this information in the book because it's not mine. I'm using those techniques and coming alongside them, and they're coming alongside me. And I do this with other people as well. It's the whole, as I said before, that whole tribe. You know, it takes a tribe, the whole community to raise an athlete. It takes a whole community to make you successful.
Inspiring. It takes a village and a community to do anything, right? Like when survival of the fittest, those were the days of living in huts and hunting the buffalo. But nowadays, when you sit in a chair, someone made that. You sit at the table, someone made that. You flick on the light switch, you drink the orange juice, you eat the bacon. Those are all things that required whole teams and trucks transporting and so many things. And we take it for granted, because if we focused on every little thing that happened in our life at every moment, we would be overwhelmed. So we have to do a little bit of the abstracting, but it still means that we should not take it for granted and be pursuing those mentors and doing the hard things and just, you know, being a good person, and don't let those setbacks, those unexpected failures stop you from where you want to go. And so the book is called Overcoming Insurmountable Odds, How I Rewired My Brain to Do the Impossible, by Scott McCreight. So Scott, if someone wants to take the next step here and reach out to you and contact you, what's the website? What's the contact details? Where do they go?
Okay, the website hasn't been created yet. I do have the domain name. In the book, when you get the book, my contact information is on that back flap, or the front flap of my contact. And I'm freely I'm on Facebook and Instagram. And the best way to do is email for right now. As time goes on and the challenges of getting this website up and running, there's some legal ramifications right now preventing me because of a couple of the stories within the book. But once we get those worked out, the website's ready to go. It's just we can't launch it yet. But my contact is in there. I freely recommend, you know, getting the book, obviously, or listening to this wonderful guy named Robert narrate the book for me. Contact me, and let's see what the next steps are, because as I said, for the parents out there with folks with cerebral palsy or stroke, you know, this shouldn't be a scary time. This should be a wonderful time, because now people like me that can show you what it feels like having cerebral palsy. So how does my kid process all this? Or how do I know that? But if you're somebody with cerebral palsy, or stroke, how do I go through it? And all the way up to that elite athlete that wants that extra little oomph to get you to that competition level that you want to be at and beyond. And so it's the whole gamut. And again, these techniques are not limited to just folks with neuroplastic challenges, but the stories and all that are meant to inspire others. I mean, one of the things that I love hearing, two things: people sending me photos of my book, them doing some crazy, overcoming their insurmountable odd, whatever, but also telling me their story about, how, they didn't let no stop them, or they didn't let can't stop them, and stuff like that. And that's what this is all about. It's never been about me. Look at me, look at me, look what I can do. Ha ha ha. It's more of, no, I can do this. I'm the catalyst to getting you out there to do more than what you think you can. Because, as I said, if all went well, is that wall there would be 3 times bigger. And it may be, it's just, focus on what you want to go for next, and all that, and don't let no stop you.
One day at a time. Well, very motivating. And that is Overcoming Insurmountable Odds by Scott McCreight. And to look him up on those social networks, Facebook and Instagram, the last name is spelled McCreight. And what a wonderful, just whole library of lessons we discussed here today. And so as we completely wrap things up here, Scott, in these last few seconds, you heard me say I'm all about the soundbite. So do you have a favorite quote, moral, or lesson that you want to share with us to really just put a bang at the end of our conversation?
Yes. Hang on for 1 second. I actually will quote this directly from the book. Let's see. Give me a second here. So my book is dedicated to all that have been told, no, you cannot do that. Do not let complacency stop you for achieving unexpected gains. Something like that. We're gonna have to edit that out.
Oh, okay. Well, do not let complacency stop you. And it's
yeah.
it's still a great
message.
Okay.
Yeah, let me try that again. This book is dedicated to all who have been told, no, you cannot do that. For you too can overcome your insurmountable odds.
Perfect. Well, now it is time to go and claim that book so that way you too can overcome those insurmountable odds. The book is Overcoming Insurmountable Odds on Amazon. Go ahead, get it right now, and follow Scott with all of his future endeavors, like the community of Leos and the sequel book and so much more. Overcoming Insurmountable Odds. Very wonderful speaking with you today, Scott.
Thank you for having me, Robert.